Hello, Miss Winelander here, and today I'm going to go through Algebra 1B, Unit 4, Lesson 4, Quiz Retake. So this is about factoring to solve quadratic equations. Today, in this recording, I'm going to go over the problems on the original quiz and how to solve them. I'm also going to say the important secret words. Remember, this is the secret word that you need in order to get your quiz retake. So at the Google Forms below, you'll have to type that in, and if you type in the correct word, I send you a retake and you can earn points back on your quiz. Let's get started with the first question first. So this one says, what is the vertex of this graph? So the vertex is right here. That's where it changes direction from either increasing to decreasing or decreasing to increasing. In this case, it has an x of 1 and a y of 3. So we always write x, y. So in this case, 1, 3. Now number 2 was related to this. And in this case, this vertex right here is a maximum. The y values do not go any higher than this. A minimum would look something like on a graph, and that vertex would be right there. For the third question, a ball is thrown into the air with initial upward velocity of 46 feet per second. Its height h in feet after t seconds is given by the function h is equal to negative 16t squared plus 46t plus 6. After how many seconds will the ball hit the ground? Alright, so there's a lot going on in this question. Let's have to break it down. First of all, after how many seconds will the ball hit the ground? That's going to tell us something about one of these variables. In this case, it's going to tell us about our height. When a ball hits the ground, the height is 0, so we want to solve for 0. So we need to set up, lost my pen there, there we go. 0 is equal to negative 16t squared plus 46t plus 6. Now we have to solve for what t values are going to get that to 0. So I always jump to factoring. Now before I start looking at factors, I do notice that each of these coefficients have a greatest common factor already that we can factor that out. It also helps us kind of get rid of this negative symbol out here because we can't multiply two numbers to get to t squared and also have a negative. So let's see, we'll get rid of negative 2. So now if we have negative 16t squared divided by negative 2, we get 8t. 46t divided by negative 2 is negative 23. T plus 6 divided by negative 2 is negative 3. Now that we have our 8t squared minus 23t minus 3, now we can start factoring that. So I usually write our a, b, and c to start. So in this case, a is 8, b is negative 23, c is negative 3. Remember, we're looking for factors of ac in this case. So 8 times negative 3, which is negative 24. So that means I'm looking for factors of negative 24 that add up to or sum of negative 23. So the first one that comes to my mind is 1 and negative 24, which 1 plus negative 24 is negative 23. So that is the factor that works out. That means I'm going to kind of break apart this middle piece into two different sections. So let's see, we have 0 is equal to negative 2. And then we have 8t squared minus 24t plus 1t minus 3. So let's keep going here. We combine those first two terms and look for a greatest common factor. So I can see that I can divide both of these by 8t. 8t squared divided by 8t is t. Negative 24t divided by 8t is negative 3. Do the same thing for these two terms. Let's see what they can have in common. Looks like the only thing I can divide them by is 1, which would leave us with t minus 3. And that is a good sign that these are both t minus 3. That means that we did our math correctly, and now we have our two factors of 8t plus 1 and t minus 3. Now we know that these have to equal to 0. The only way to have something equal to 0 is when you're multiplying, is that one of those terms or both have to be equal to 0. So we'll use the 0 product sum. 8t minus 8t plus 1, sorry, 8t plus 1 is equal to 0, or t minus 3 is equal to 0. So let's solve for t. We have 8t is equal to negative 1 divided by 8. So now we're left with t is equal to negative 1/8. Or when we do inverse operations, we get t is equal to 3. So which of these makes sense in the question here? Well, after how many seconds will the ball hit the ground? We can't hit the ground at negative 1/8 seconds. So it's definitely going to be 3. So our answer is 3 seconds. Let's look at number 6. Again, we have a ball being thrown into the air. This time initial upward velocity of 60 feet per second. Its height h in feet after t seconds is given by the function h is equal to negative 16t squared plus 60t plus 6. What will height be at t is equal to 3? So that means we need to substitute t is equal to 3 into the equation. So we have h is equal to negative 16, 3 squared plus 60 times 3 plus 6. That leads us, when we start simplifying, remember order of operations when we're looking at our PEMDAs. Start with our exponents. We have 3 squared, which is 9, plus 60 times 3 plus 6. Now we can get to multiplication and division going left to right. So first we have negative 16 times 9, which is negative 144. 60 times 3 is 180, so we add 180, add 6. Now we get to addition and subtraction left to right. And when we add up all of those, we get 42. So what will the height be at t is equal to 3 seconds? 42, and it looks like the units are feet. So 42 feet. All right, our next question here, I've jumped a little bit ahead. For number 5 is we have to solve for x. We have x squared minus 121 is equal to 0. So with no middle term, with kind of b is equal to 0, let's try to see if we can just use square roots. So inverse operations to both sides. That leaves x squared is equal to 121. We could square root both sides. We get x is equal to plus or minus 11. Remember that it's not just positive 11, because when you square something, it could be 2 positives or 2 negatives, because remember, negative 11 times a negative 11 is also positive 121. So you can see it written like this, or sometimes you'll see it written out like this. Both of those are correct because they're saying the same things, just in different ways. All right, so the next question here, we're going to solve by factoring. Before that, I'm just going to let you know that we have the secret word here. So this is what you'll need to write down below in the Google Forms. The word today is attitude. So that's how you can change your outlook. You can change your math grade based on your attitude. That kind of plays a crucial role there. So make sure you type that out below. Again, that's attitude for the secret word. Now when we're factoring this, there's a couple of different ways you can approach it. Right away I notice that my coefficient of this first term is 1. So that means that I can kind of immediately just start thinking of factors of c that add up to b. Because remember, if you go a is equal to 1, b is equal to 8, c is equal to 7, factors of ac, well, 1 times 7 is 7. So it's the same basic idea. So factors of 7 that add up to 8. Sum of 8. I frequently make kind of a table here to keep track. Here, because 7 is a prime number, it's just 1 and 7. And luckily, 1 plus 7 is 8. So that means that our factors are going to be 1 and 7. We know that m has to go here because the only way to get m squared is m times m. So that's how we factor. Now we do the zero products. So the only way that two things when they multiply equal 0 is at least one of them has to be equal to 0. So we set them both equal to 0 to give us both of our options. Using inverse operations, we can subtract 1 from both sides, get negative 1. Over here, do something similar, subtract 7 both sides, get negative 7. And we usually write these from least to greatest, so negative 7, negative 1. And that's our answer for number 6. For number 7, we're also factoring. So again, let's see, we'll say A is equal to 1, B is equal to 2, C is equal to negative 24. So AC is equal to negative 24. So we're looking for factors of negative 24 that add up to 2. All right, so let's see, one of them could be 1 and negative 24. When they add up, that's negative 23. That's pretty far away from 2, so look at factors that are closer together. So let's see, another factor pair. Oh, okay, let's do 4 and negative 6. 4 plus negative 6 is negative 2. So instead, let's try negative 4, positive 6. Negative 4 plus 6 is 2. So that's our factor pairs that we're going to use. So when we rewrite this, we're going to separate that center term, that B term, into two parts here. So we have n squared, plus 2n minus 24 is equal to 0. So when we factor these, we know that our factors are going to be negative 4 and positive 6. All right, so we know we have n and n. That's the only way to get to n squared. Now we know we have negative 4 plus 6 here. Again, we're going to make sure that at least one of those is equal to 0. That's the only way that we know that the product would be equal to 0. Doing inverse operations, we have n is either equal to 4 or n is either equal to negative 6. We can write that with n is equal to negative 6, 4. All right, the last question here says one more rectangular shaped piece of metal siding needs to be cut to cover the exterior of a pole barn. The area of the piece is 30 feet squared. The length is 1 less than 3 times the width. How wide should the metal piece be? Round to the nearest hundredth of a foot. So let's kind of break this out. So this first thing kind of gives us a visual picture of a pole barn with a rectangular piece of metal. So we know it's a rectangular. Also over here we're talking about the area. So let's see, the area of a rectangle would be area is equal to length times width. And we know that the area in this case is 30 feet squared. So area is equal to 30 feet squared. The length is 1 less than 3 times the width. So let's think about how we can write that expression here. So we have 3 times the width, so 3w. 1 less than that, so it's not 1 minus 3w, it's 3w minus 1. And that's equal to the length. And it says, how wide should the metal piece be? So we have to solve for the width here. That's our unknown. Let's substitute what we know so far and see what we can do. So area we know is equal to 30. Length is equal to 3w minus 1. And all of that's being multiplied by the width. So when we simplify that, we can use the distributive property and do 3w times w and negative 1 times w. We get 3w squared minus w. In order to solve for the width, I'm going to try to set this equal to 0 so that I can hopefully use factoring in order to solve. So let's subtract 30 from both sides. 30 minus 30 is 0. So we have 0 is equal to 3w squared minus w minus 30. Now let's see if we can factor that. So we have a is equal to 3, b is equal to negative 1, c is equal to negative 30. So ac is equal to 3 times negative 30 or negative 90. So what are factors of negative 90 that sum to negative 1? So remember that negative 1, just like on the previous one, it's a smaller number, so we're looking at factors that are pretty close to each other. So what I think of first is 9 and 10, but since it's negative 90, one of those has to be negative, so let's try negative 9 and positive 10. Negative 9 plus 10 is 1, so it's close, but it's actually the negative. It needs to be with the negative 10. So 9 plus negative 10 is negative 1. So that's our factors that we're splitting our center term into. So when we rewrite this, we have 0 is equal to 3w squared, and then plus 9w minus 10w minus 30. So now look at those first two terms and seeing what common factor they have. So it looks like I can divide both of those by 3w. 3w squared divided by 3w is just w. 9w divided by 3w is 3. Look at the next two terms. It looks like I could divide both of those by negative 10. So negative 10w divided by negative 10 is w. Negative 30 divided by negative 10 is 3. It's a good sign that those are both the same. So now we know we have a term of 3w minus 10. That's one of our factors, and 3w plus 3. So since we know that one of those has to equal to 0, let's set both of them equal to 0 and see. Using inverse operations, we can add 10 to both sides. We get 3w is equal to 10. Divide by 3 to get w is equal to 10/3. Inverse operation here, minus 3. We get w is equal to negative 3. So let's look back at the problem to see which one would make the most sense. So we're looking for the width of a rectangular sheet. We're probably not going to have a negative width here. So we're looking for a width of 10/3. It does say to give our answer in the nearest hundredth of a foot. So if you know this off the top of your head, that's wonderful. Definitely practice that. Otherwise, you can bring up your calculator and type that in. So 10 divided by 3 is 3.33. 3333333. So we're looking for nearest hundredth. Oops. Nearest hundredth is goes tens, hundreds. So we have the width of 3.33 feet. So that would be our final answer. So remember, you paid attention to this whole video and caught that secret word. Type that secret word below in the Google form. Once you answer all of those questions, then it will be sent to us. We'll send you a retake that's fewer. It's going to be fewer questions because it's only going to be the questions that you got incorrect the first time on the quiz. If you have any questions, just make sure you let us know.